Have you ever noticed that when people talk about feminism today, they often act like it's one single movement with one shared set of beliefs? But here's the reality. Not all feminist perspectives agree on some of the biggest questions facing society right now. Questions like, what exactly is a woman? What's the difference between sex and gender? How should sports, laws, and public policies handle those differences? Today, we're breaking down the differences between traditional feminism and queer feminism, and why biological sex remains a major part of many modern debates. Let's get into it. Traditional feminism emerged as a movement focused on women as a biological sex class. Historically, women faced legal, political, and economic disadvantages specifically because they were female. That's why early feminists fought for things like the right to vote, property ownership, equal access to education, and equal opportunities in the workplace. Protection from discrimination and reproductive rights. The central idea was pretty straightforward. Women experience certain forms of discrimination because they are female, so laws and institutions should address those realities. From this perspective, biological sex isn't just a social label. It's a real, material characteristic that affects people's lives in meaningful ways. And because of that, many traditional feminists argue that women's rights depend on recognizing women as a distinct sex-based group. Queer feminism comes from a different intellectual tradition. It draws heavily from queer theory and postmodern ideas about identity. Instead of focusing primarily on biological sex, queer feminism places more emphasis on gender identity, self-expression, and social expectations. Many queer feminists argue that gender roles are socially constructed and identity should be self-defined. Traditional categories like male and female can sometimes be restrictive. Gender diversity deserves recognition and protection. So, while traditional feminism often asks, how are women disadvantaged because they are female? Queer feminism might ask, how do social expectations limit people who don't fit traditional gender norms? These movements overlap in some areas, but they're not built on exactly the same assumptions. And that's where today's disagreements begin. One common assumption is that queer feminism is simply the next evolution of feminism. But many people disagree with that idea. Social movements don't always develop in a straight line where newer means better. Many traditional feminists argue that their movement has a different purpose altogether. Their focus is protecting rights for women as a biological category. And they argue that replacing sex-based definitions with identity-based definitions can create difficult questions in certain areas, such as women's sports, female prisons, and domestic violence shelters, medical research, and the collection of sex-based data. From this perspective, queer feminism isn't necessarily an upgrade. It's a separate framework. Sometimes they share goals, sometimes they don't. And the disagreement isn't just about strategy. It's often about how each movement defines the group feminism is intended to protect. This brings us to one of the most debated topics today. What's the difference between sex and gender? Generally speaking, biological sex refers to reproductive classification based on characteristics such as chromosomes and reproductive anatomy. In humans, sex is typically categorized as male or female, although rare differences in sexual development do exist. Gender, on the other hand, usually refers to identity, social roles, cultural expectations, and personal expression. Many scholars and policymakers argue that both concepts can be meaningful at the same time. Recognizing gender identity doesn't eliminate biological sex, and acknowledging biological sex doesn't automatically invalidate gender identity. For example, medical treatments may vary based on biological sex. Certain drug responses can differ between males and females. Pregnancy is a sex-specific biological function. And average athletic performance differences between males and females become significant after puberty. Because of realities like these, many institutions continue to use both sex and gender as separate but relevant categories. Women's sports are probably one of the clearest examples of why this debate exists. Most sports organizations separate male and female categories because male puberty typically creates measurable physiological advantages. These can include greater muscle mass, higher bone density, and larger heart and lung capacity. The purpose of female sporting categories is generally competitive fairness. Without sex-based divisions, many female athletes could face significant disadvantages. That's why debates about eligibility in women's sports often focus on biological factors rather than identity alone. Supporters of sex-based categories usually frame the issue around fairness, safety, and equal opportunity, not around anyone's personal worth. So where does all of this leave us? Traditional feminism and queer feminism are distinct movements with different foundations. Traditional feminism tends to center women as a biological sex class and focuses on sex-based rights and protections. Queer feminism places greater emphasis on identity, gender diversity, and challenging traditional categories. The existence of gender identities doesn't eliminate biological sex, and biological sex continues to matter in areas like medicine and reproduction. And athletic competition. Ultimately, the debate isn't simply about whether sex exists or whether gender exists. Most agree both are real. The bigger question is how society should balance biological realities, personal identity, fairness, inclusion, and equal rights. And that's a conversation that's likely to continue for years to come. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think traditional feminism and queer feminism are fundamentally different movements or part of the same project? Share your perspective in the comments, keep it respectful, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.